Hey guys, Andrew here, and welcome back to Q&A video number 2. You ask questions, and I answer them. Sorry this one has been delayed as all living heck by my remaster of my retired Steam Excursion Stars list. I thought I was going to need a break after part 1, but turns out I didn't really need it because I had gotten my act together at that point. You can tell because of the voice in the video, not this one. I also need a break from my voice on that one, but anyway, let's get to the questions now. So, I mean, hey, at least the delay will have some more questions to be put in. So, and as always, if your questions don't get answered, feel free to just let me know in the comment section below, and then I'll just reply to them and answer them, and then maybe answer them in a future Q&A video. So, let's begin. So, first one is from Max the Railfan. Have you ever seen XATSF or BN? Number 1. 2. Do you like the Union Pacific? All right, let's show you the comment real quick. I've yet to seen any XATSF locomotives yet. I mean, if I lived in, like, Texas, I mean, there's a big yard in Galveston that does have a lot of fake bonds and stuff. I mean, and yellow bonds, too, but, I mean, I have seen one XBN unit. That would be GP10 number 1323 at the Eagle Mine in Houghton, Michigan, back during a Michigan summer camp. I mean, linked right there up in this card, if I remember to put it in. Number 2, do you like the Union Pacific? Yes. I mean, heck, I'm even wearing my Union Pacific shirt, coincidentally, from the Bailey Yard in Nebraska. I mean, I've loved Union Pacific for a long time. First with the 119, and then more recently, big boys. I mean, heck, I even have my big boy model just sitting right here at the moment. And by the way, I turned my water tender into a flat car. It was nice while it lasted, though. Yeah, I just needed a bit of a rolling stock. And a really great railroad, too. I mean, really keen on educating people about the public and steam stuff and just so much more. Alright, next one is from Thomas the Union Pacific Challenger. Alright, number 1. Do you think there should be a replica of a New York Central and a Niagara built? I think he meant to say Hudson and Niagara built. I mean, totally yes, definitely. So freaking iconic steam locomotives that should have been freaking preserved had it not been for the terrible mental state of Alfred E. Perlman, because he apparently didn't want his company to look old. The steam locomotives getting preserved, which really sucks. Somebody actually attempted to get a new Hudson built, but the plan fell through, which really sucks. Especially when you consider that we managed to get a T1 project back up, specifically a Pennsylvania Railroad T1, which is much bigger. I'm sure the New York Central fans are just wanting a Hudson so bad and disappointed because they were longtime rivals. Anyway, number 2. Do you think the railroading heritage of Midwestern America will build a new firebox for $39.85 to replace the warped one that it currently has? I don't know that yet. I mean, possibly might. I don't know if the metal's that bad. Possibly, if they got the money to, and the metal to, hopefully, because $39.85 is, like, in such horrible condition. Like, so bad. Like, even in worse condition than a 4014 was when Union Pacific got it from California. Number 3. Do you think the GE U50s, not counting the U50Cs, should have been preserved? Yeah, definitely. Yes, the U50 was a little too heavy. I mean, otherwise, it was a really good locomotive, and I'm pretty sure the largest diesel locomotive GE built. I mean, and definitely the most powerful GE locomotive, at least diesel locomotive, that was actually pretty successful. I mean, the AC 6000 CW was not really so successful, just like its EMD counterpart, the SD90 Mac -H, to be specific. Number 4, Union Pacific or BNSF? Union Pacific. I mean, not just because of how much I love Union Pacific, but also BNSF's new wild attendance policy that treats their employees like freaking robots, requiring them to be available for 28 days straight, and the risk of losing their job after a certain number of points for not showing up on work, which is just ridiculous. Yep, make me dislike BNSF even more. Which is already not helped by the fact that, despite the number of patched BN units and ATSF units they still have, that they apparently don't have a proper heritage unit because apparently they don't seem to like their heritage, or at least the people that have been with them pretty much before it was even formed. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous. Yeah, I don't remember much of that article. Yeah. There was a fifth question too that he does have pretty much in this section here. That is SDP40F or F40PH. F40, duh. I mean, as a passenger locomotive especially, because the SDP40F, I mean, oh boy. Yep, that is definitely in line for a future Dead on Arrival video. The freight locomotive, it was alright, as shown with the Santa Fe. Blake Christensen. Number 1, what was your major in college? I think you might have thought a little too far into the future because I'm not a college student yet. Technically more so, I've just finished up high school. It's gonna be real, but I'm not gonna say which college though, just for my own private safety. And what college was it? I'll reveal after I graduate college. Number 3, what's your favorite Lego MOC that you have made so far? Yeah, this one's been tough for a long time. I mean, it was originally my Union Pacific big boy over there. It was a massive accomplishment. But recently it's now my Pierre Marquette 1225, which is all the way up on that shelf. Yeah, because I had to take all of my Legos off the floor and put them up on the shelves in preparation for college, because I'll be pretty much going out of state for this one. Alabama doesn't seem to have the right college for my special needs with trains. I mean, which is alright. Maybe eventually in the future. My 1225 pretty much is now my favorite Lego MOC because it's more detail and stuff. It just looks more realistic, like the flying number boards and the cow catcher and even the front coupler. I've never successfully had both a front coupler and a cow catcher on one of my Lego MOCs until now with that thing. Next one is from Angel from Heaven 3751. Which trains is the best to buy? I don't know exactly, really. I only have trains a new era at the moment. I don't really know much else about the others. I did try Trains Railroad Simulator 2019 on my PC, but I just can't seem to get it to run as well, so I'm just gonna stick with Tane. For some people it's different, but Tane mainly because I have a much easier time running it at 60 FPS. I tried everything, but I can't seem to get TRS 19 to just run it. Alright. Next one is Rowan A. Okay. Number 1. What do you think of Penn Central? Because I think it was a bad idea, and a New York Central, Chesapeake, and Ohio Railroad would be better. Yeah, I agree with you on that too. Penn Central, yeah, that's like, it's easily my least favorite railroad of all time. And heck, when I went up to a Michigan rail camp at a Michigan Technical University, and while I was chatting with some of the other rail fans there, a lot of them even described Penn Central as the worst railroad ever. And I've agreed with them ever since. Like, even worse than the Gettysburg, for that matter, because granted, Gettysburg was, well, terrible at running a railroad and stuff, but, I mean, then again, it was just only a little tourist railroad, whereas Penn Central was a freaking Class 1, and also formed out of the two worst possible, and later three worst possible, railroads, specifically New York Central, Pennsylvania, longtime rivals, and then later being forced by the government to acquire the New Haven, which only just made it more bankrupt as heck, because New Haven was notorious for going in and out of bankruptcy. Possibly explains why not a single steam locomotive from New Haven even survived. And yeah, I definitely think a New York Central, Chesapeake, and Ohio merger would be much better. Granted, maybe Amtrak wouldn't have been created as fast unless something really bad happened. But it was definitely a better idea. I definitely heard too about the fact that it wanted to merge originally with the C&O from that video called Rise and Fall of Penn Central by a British YouTuber. It's like 18 minutes long and really informative too. How government interference really screwed up the plan initially. Like, I even come up with a name for what this fictional railroad would be. Chessie Central. Anyway, number 2. Are you going to hate people who like the PRR S1? Because I'm going to be honest with you. I like the S1, and the impression I got out of your video was that nobody should love it, and those who do are insane. Yeah, I've kind of had mixed thoughts on the S1 more recently after watching what History in the Dark had to say about the S1, saying that it was at least a good performer. I mean, it rode smoothly and was powerful, but the problem was it was just way too freaking big. Was kind of form over function, that kind of regard. But yeah, I mean, I still kind of consider the S1 pretty much worthy of ending up on the show anyway for a remaster, being considered pretty much a failure because, well, it can only just run on one line, which really made it almost completely useless on other ones. Even more useless than giants like the big boys, for that matter. And finally, for this paper from Western Ohio Interurban History, who is Joe? Joe Mama or the Joe, or I don't know, or maybe our current president Joe Biden, who, by the way, seems to like trains pretty much. Anyway, next one. Indian Railfan. Best school year? That'd be my last one. My senior year in high school. Yeah, that was just good. Memorable too. Really prepped me for college and got me ready for it. And also really impressed my math teacher so much in calculus. I was like top of the class. I was definitely one of our most memorable students ever in that regard. And also impressing my other teachers as well. Birthday? December 26, 2002. Least favorite video? Probably my old retired Steam Excursion Stars video. Yeah, it was like a mixture of rush production, terrible recording location because I was like in the garage at night, and so my voice was just not so freaking lively and all that, and rush info and just being more excited for the number one on that spot, and not so much just focusing or just putting in a lot of info for just the other ones and a lack of research and all that. Most favorite video? Honestly, I'd have to say now it's part 2 of my remastered version of that video now, because it was like so much more informative, more accurate, and also a more epic ending, especially with the number 1, which I'm not gonna reveal if you haven't seen it. But yeah, that video was an epic 4th of July special. I don't think I could ever outdo that, pretty much. And also, not just outdoing it with the quality of the video and just how excited I was for that one, but also doing it while at home, and thus pretty much able to blow up some fireworks at home at the same time, which was awesome, because I pretty much do this every 4th, so almost every 4th, you know, with the exception being of when I'm not in town. So alright, next set of questions. Isaiah Marchington. Number 1, what are your plans for future uploads this summer? Possibly maybe 1 or 2 more Dead on Arrival videos, maybe another Locomography episode if I have time, because, well, I have a summer job, obviously, but I'm also getting a physics tutoring as requested by my parents, even though I have to put my job ahead of it, like, all the time, which I easily do so that I don't lose it, because it gives me something to do this summer when I'm not just working on YouTube, and also make some money. Number 2, what are your favorite 6-axle and 4-axle diesels? Starting with 6-axle, my top favorite is easily the EMD SD80 Mac. Very rare diesel locomotive, only 30 of which were ever made, all of which for Conrail, and I'm a Conrail fan, so that's awesome. But also one of EMD's most successful out there, and also its most powerful recently successful diesel locomotive, because the SD90 Mac was a complete failure at 6,000 horsepower, only worked when it had a 4,300 horsepower engine. And it was also just so technologically advanced and so powerful as well, and reliable for that matter, even fuel-wise, despite having a V20 engine, which made the previous SD45s fuel hoggers, and just how iconic it was because of how unique it was from other diesel locomotives. And it's a really terrible shame, honestly, that NS never occurred to them to just set one aside. And the fact that pretty much only 2 are left with Canadian Pacific now, I mean, chances are slim that maybe Canadian Pacific will let one go for preservation, but we just don't know. We could always just make one out of SD90 Mac parts and scrap SD90 Mac parts if possible, but I don't know. I mean, other 6-axle diesels do include perhaps like the current SD70 Ace from EMD, and let's see, EMD FP45s as well, and maybe some GEs as well, like the C40-8W, and also its the C40-8M, the full width cowl version of it, used by BC Rail and CN. 4-axle diesels, some of them do include GE's B40-8W, pretty much the only freight-oriented wide cab diesel locomotive in the US with 4 axles. At the time these were being made, I mean, they were just now rare because other railroads had just turned to 6-axle power because more attractive effort, better weight distribution and stuff. I mean, other ones also do include this EMD counterpart, the GP60M, and then some other more passenger-oriented ones, like the 40PH, as previously mentioned. There's some other good ones out there, but those are like my top favorites. Alright. Let's just go real quick. Mr. Crocker, number 1. What is the most unholy diesel-electric locomotive that you hate, apart from GE's U50C and Alco C855s, both of which were unsuccessful and had aluminum wiring? The Baldwin RP210. I mean, definitely in line to get roasted on dead on arrival, because holy moly, that thing was just so bad. I mean, it was pretty much a mixture of a diesel locomotive and an electric locomotive as well. It was meant to pretty much be both, but it was just so freaking unreliable, so horrible and all that. Like, heck, it was so bad it even killed Baldwin. As in, it was the last diesel locomotive the company ever made, so kind of looks like that thing just straight up killed its company after it was made, because it was just so bad. There's also some other like problems I can mention, like catching fire once and pantograph stuff, and also the fact that Baldwin just struggled to make diesels very well and keep in touch with EMD as far as how technologically advanced it was. But yeah. Number 2. When do you plan on roasting all 4 US steam turbine locomotives in a future episode of Dead on Arrival? Yeah, I'm planning on eventually doing it in a future episode. I mean, I considered the Pennsylvania S2 for some time. But yeah, I definitely think they all really deserve to get some attention on that show, because some of them were pretty bad, or just other words, unable to compete with steam locomotives in that regard. But yeah. And also the fact diesels were just starting to take over around the same time they were being made, so just made them obsolete like so quick. C&W Productions. Number 1. Do you have trains? Yes. I've used it in some of my videos at this point, including my newest one, 2 most recent Engines of Pure Marquette videos, specifically the 060 Switchers and Berkshire episodes, and also in my previous top 10 before my Retired Steam Excursion Stars remaster. 2. What LEGO engines do you plan to build in the future? Well, I've actually finished designing an EMD SC80 Mac in LeoCAD, in Conrail colors, of course. I mean, I'm even gathering up all the parts on a Brickell, so just gotta get around to doing it, and just get around to completing all that, and so that way I can just ship them here and just get it built. I'm also pretty much working on a London and Northeastern B4, and also a Pure Marquette Mikado, specifically number 1037, which, as discussed in my Mikado episode of Engines of Pure Marquette, it was actually sold to the Sydney and Lewisburg Railway after being retired from the C&O, and that was like the closest a PM Mikado ever came to getting preserved. It was sadly scrapped though by the Canadians. And number 3, will you ever go to the Illinois Railway Museum? Hopefully in the future. I mean, I'd love to do it. I mean, so many great things there, including a Little Joe Electric, which has the same wheel arrangement as the big boys. What else? I think also another DDA 40X of Conrail E33 and an FB45, I think. And then there's also Frisco 1630 as well. Hopefully you get to go eventually, and my family will do anything to make such visits possible. Moving on then to Maozilla. Number 1. Why do you think all the New York Central trains were scrapped? It's because of Alfred E. Perlman for what he did. He wasn't even like Edward Thompson, for example. Really spelled pretty badly, but yeah, definitely Alfred E. Perlman. Yeah, like History in the Dark kind of said it. He really didn't like preservation of steam locomotives from his company because he felt it would make his company look old and outdated. He was in a really bad mental state at the time, and it also wasn't helped by the fact that as steam locomotives were being phased out, passenger ridership via train was declining, and the railroads were starting to suffer, as Amtrak guy quotes it, dreadfully, and no one cared. But yeah, we really should have preserved more New York Central steam locomotives. Had it not been for his bad mental state, maybe we would have gotten more, even a Hudson or 2, and a Niagara, and maybe some of the other ones, like maybe a few Mikados and stuff, or yeah, other than the Mohawks, other ones are just kind of lame for just that little switcher that got rammed by a freight car once. I mean, and there's also 999, but it's not lame, it's really nice. Even if it claimed a false or just made up speed record of 112 miles an hour. But hey, it's a good engine nonetheless. Number 2, Do you think when TRRT 15550 is done, would they build on other extinct steam locomotives? It would probably encourage more people to maybe do more steam locomotive new build projects, possibly in the future, seeing how much the impact of the A1 Trust has pretty much had on the idea back in the UK. Looks like it's spawned more projects, including the new P2 project that they're now working on. So yeah, hopefully we do pretty much attempt more rebuilds in the future after the T1 is finished. And number 3, do you think the London, Brighton, and South Coast E2 should have been preserved or modified them with shortened the wheels and longer coal bunker? Okay, more screwed up grammar again. Yeah, I feel like they would have been better for preservation if they were like, as mentioned in the E2, like the idea of a rebuild to just make them shorter and have the wheels grouped more closely together. Coincidentally, how Thomas's design is, that would have made the class much better. Honestly, improved its performance for an 060 and made it more reasonably sized for an 060. The other size they had just wasn't really. It was a little too big for the good of an 060. It was more better suited for, say, 262 or even 282 or 280 if the wheels were closely together.
Why not rebuild them into 282Ts with a longer bunker, 2 larger outside cylinders instead of inside ones, and frames with a shorter distance between each axle?
And stuff, but if an E2 ever got an E2X rebuild treatment to make it better and possibly being shortened coincidentally to similarly to Thomas, then yeah, go ahead. Preserve it. You can make that the basis of Thomas. Because personally, the E2s were like easily the worst possible basis for him in the first place. Really absolute complete crap compared to the one we know in the TV show, performance-wise, and also pretty much dating back to the original season. Alright, moving on then. Just show's coming again. The Oaklander. Do you have a model railroad? No. We don't even have enough space in the house for one to be built. Later on, maybe I might make one. Pretty much if my new house has enough space. I mean, then again, my family hasn't really had a history of likings toward trains or just being interested in them, apart from me, but again, I'm only 19, so possibly, yeah, if somebody else had, we probably would have had a model railroad in the house well before I was even here. I do have a bunch of Lego trains, though. I'm personally just more interested in those, to be honest, because you can make them pretty much to your own manner and even just make models of locomotives that manufacturers otherwise just don't offer. Number 2, top 3 favorite railroads. Number 1, Union Pacific, followed by number 2, which is Conrail, and number 3, Santa Fe. There's also some good ones lower below, like Southern Pacific, Pierre Marquette, Southern, Norfolk and Western, New York Central, and so many more especially good railroads. Minus Penn Central. Number 3, other hobbies? Yeah, aside from YouTube, I also do design Lego trains and LeoCAD and later build them, doing train spotting like you also see me do on YouTube sometimes. Also just some gaming, trains, and World of Warships. So yeah, that's a pretty good question. Alright, final round of questions, which are also pretty much now in black because I switched to dark mode before I pulled them up, so and also consolidated them. JLA917. Hello, my question is, what's your all-time favorite steam engine, and what's your thoughts on Pierre Marquette 1225? Also, greeting from the Philippines. Oh, nice. Yeah, at this point, it's pretty much now the Union Pacific big boys. The PM Burks have now just become number 2. They're still easily my favorite non-articulated, but in terms of all-time favorite steam locomotives, number 2 now. Just something special about the big boys, to be honest. That just storms the PM Burks. The PM Burks still are special in my heart because, well, I pretty much grew up watching the Polar Express, and 1225 was the basis of the Polar Express. And just my loving of Christmas so much, and I grew up watching that movie almost every Christmas growing up as a child, so along with my brothers as well. So love to see 1225 one day. Tom, the FNAF and Railroad dude. Would it be cool if 1 or 2 New York Centrals, Niagaras, and Southern Pacific AC9s were preserved? Oh yeah, I agree. Especially the New York Central Niagaras, because they were often sometimes considered the best steam locomotives and also some of the best northerns out there. Also among the most iconic as well. In the AC9s, well, maybe not as special as the Niagaras, they were still among the few 2884 Yellowstone types ever built. Not to mention that the only Yellowstones pretty much that are still left with us are now just all DM&IR Yellowstones. And that also only 4 railroads even bought Yellowstones. At least we got Southern Pacific Cap forward preserved, effectively just reversed Yellowstones, especially the one we actually have still left us. JS Gaming. Which one do you think is worse? British Rail Class 17 or British Rail Class 28? 17, especially if you ask History in the Dark, to be honest, I totally agree too. With him, it's totally just so much more worse. Like, heck, Derek, Diesel with teething troubles from Thomas the Tank Engine episode season 5, specifically the Bill and Ben episode. Heck, he was even based off the 17. Fitting, because that character also had really bad teething troubles like the original Class 17s did. That Diesel was even a better basis for him than the E2 was for Thomas. 28 also had some serious problems too, including a window falling out, a British equivalent of P-30CH story that resulted in the conductor yelling that iconic quote of
God GE piece of
Okay, his next one, an EMD SD50 or SDP40F. Yeah, I'd say SDP40F. Granted, it was terrible at passenger service because it just jumped off the tracks a lot, but when adapted for freight service, though, by the Santa Fe, it works just fine. It was good at it. Meanwhile, the SD50, yeah, it was pretty bad. Not to mention it also tarnished EMD's reputation and was ultimately what resulted in GE becoming the #1 locomotive manufacturer in the US. Effectively, the SD50 pretty much knocked EMD down to second place. It's still a good manufacturer, though, and still redeemed themselves. PRR S1 or Q1? Because the S1, granted, it was like way too freaking big for its own good as far as routability went, but in terms of performance, though, it ran pretty well. The Q1, though, yeah, it sucked in terms of performance. It was just, and also really poorly designed, even worse than this one. And his final one, and SR Leader Class versus CIE number CC1. I have no idea what that latter one is. I need to go search that one up. The latter? I don't know. Sorry for the late question. Yeah, that's alright, buddy. This Q&A video ended up getting delayed anyway. At CatF the Alpha, here's the thought. Favorite articulated locomotive with a single frame? Then you put 1225 in Big Boy there. I think articulated with a single frame, that's kind of like duplex or something. Or, it's a good suggestion though. Blake Christensen USA, similar college-related question. That was timed a little way too soon, too personal. Lego Mach, 1225 Mach. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that's all the questions we have. I think. I'm just gonna double check. Oh, got one here. Edward Randolph. I'll post it pretty much right here for me. What is the rarest thing you've caught on film when going train spotting? That would be the one time I captured an SD-80 Mac on camera back in 2019 when I was working on my Eagle Scout project at the Huntsville Depot. I didn't really notice it was an SD-80 Mac yet. Back then, I wasn't really interested in diesel locomotives. It wasn't until pretty much when I went to Michigan Tech that I actually became more respectful toward diesel locomotives and more interested in them. And shortly after becoming a Conrail fan, I eventually heard of the SD-80 Max and eventually decided to scan for my footage one day and actually for ex-Conrail engines and just found the SD-80 Mac pretty much right in that one. Yeah, I mean, there was also another earlier time as well. I caught an SD-80 Mac on film at Huntsville Depot. It's only on Facebook. And I could really tell it was an SD-80 Mac pretty much in both clips because of the sandbox at the rear. Like, there's kind of like a big notch in the back that makes the SD-80 Mac so distinctive. Yeah, that was like so rare because it's likely we'll never see a Mac 80 ever again now that only 2 are left with CP and being used for parts sources, and even one running again. Well, it's questionable depending on how much CRHS is able to get out of the last remaining SD-80 Macs, likely just a shell. And also by the fact that I haven't really caught any ATSF or Southern Pacific units on camera still retaining their old paint. I have caught some former Southern Pacific units in UP paint on camera though, but that's nowhere near as rare as, well, just seeing them in their old paint, nor as rare as just an SD-80 Mac. Not to mention the SD-80 Macs were just so rare. So, yeah. But yeah, that pretty much does it for this Q&A video. Boy, I am completely dehydrated from all this talking. I am not really built for this stuff, but hey. Hope you enjoyed this Q&A video. If so, you know what to do. Press the like button and subscribe to my channel so that you can see more railroad-related content like this. And also, make sure you turn on notifications so that you'll be notified every time more videos like this come up. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.